The small house stood quiet, its walls thin enough to hear the rats scratching. In the corner, a boy sat cross-legged on the cold floor, his knees pulled to his chest. His eyes, wide and dry, followed the flicker of a candle stub melting on the table. His name was Ethan, and he was only 15 years, but his shoulders hung low like someone carrying years of silence. No one ever called his name with joy. When his mother or father said it, their lips curled like the word itself tasted bitter. He had learned not to look for their arms. There were none. His mother, Linda, and father, Richard, had lives of their own, separate ones. Their secret had once burned bright, but when the smoke rose, it choked everyone around them. People whispered at shops. Neighbors paused in doorways. In church, necks turned but faces didn't smile. Their mistake was loud. But no one noticed Ethan, the quiet mark it left behind. They walked away. Not because their houses were full, but because their hearts were not. He ended up in a house with a sagging roof and a woman with slow steps and silver hair. Grandma Margaret held his hand the first night and never let go. She stirred porridge with tired arms, read from her cracked Bible when the lights were out, and hummed old songs as she rubbed his back to sleep. Her hands were thin, but they always found a way to do more. If there was only one piece of yam, she gave him the bigger part. If she was tired, she still waited until he ate. At school events, he stood alone in the crowd. Other children waved at fathers with phones and mothers with handbags. Ethan stood still, hands stuffed in his pockets, eyes fixed on nothing. On birthdays he never got called. In church people shifted when he passed, like he carried something that might rub off. One night, while helping wash her feet, he asked why people looked at him like that. She ran a shaky hand through his hair and whispered something about blessings, her voice trembling like the curtain in a breeze. Her eyes glistened. He didn't ask again. Then came the cough. It started soft, but it wouldn't stop. She began forgetting small things, where she put the keys, how many spoons of tea to use. Some mornings she didn't leave bed at all. Ethan poured water over her hands, lit the fire, read to her from the Bible she loved. His voice cracked when he got to the verses she used to read with strength. One night, her chest rose and didn't fall again. He sat beside her, holding her fingers as they grew cold. "Please don't leave me," he whispered. But the room stayed quiet. Too quiet. She didn't wake up. At the funeral, he stood near the coffin, wearing shoes a size too small. His mother, Linda, appeared in a black dress and large glasses. She didn't come close. She stood by a tree, arms folded, eyes hidden. She left before the last shovel of dirt was thrown. Richard never came. People passed him plates of food, said short words and left. No one asked where he would sleep that night. No one followed him back to the house with the leaning door and broken lamp. He returned alone. There was no food on the table. The cupboard was empty. The night crept in through holes in the window. He laid on the floor, arms over his eyes. The next days moved like injured animals. Slow, heavy, hard. He walked to the well. He boiled cassava leaves. He waited for footsteps that never came. At first, some neighbors dropped leftovers. One woman gave him bread and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But as the days passed, they stopped looking his way. People turned their backs. At the market, he heard someone call him the forgotten one. Then came a knock on the door. It was soft, careful. A young woman stood outside, holding a clipboard. Her shirt was neat and her eyes kind. She sat with him on the old bench, asking questions he didn't know how to answer. "We've spoken to your mother," she said, voice low. "She's willing to meet." For the first time in days, his chest lifted. His feet bounced under the bench. Maybe she had come to take him home. At the office, the fan turned slowly above them. He sat on a wooden chair, hands folded, eyes on the door. Then she walked in. Linda. She didn't smile. She didn't reach for him. She sat across the room like the space between them was too thick to cross. Her fingers played with her watch. "I can't take him," she said, her voice sharp like broken glass. "My husband doesn't even know the child exists." The officer sat still, her pen frozen in the air. "He's your son." Linda didn't blink. "He's also a reminder." Her voice cracked, but her face stayed stiff. Ethan looked down. The floor swam. He blinked fast, but the tears fell anyway. His mouth opened but no words came out. Just the sound of breath catching in his throat. He didn't lift his head. The knock on the door was sharp. Richard's face appeared, tight and cold. His eyes didn't meet Ethan's. "I told you when this started, if anyone finds out I lose everything," he said, voice clipped. He held up a crumpled hospital bill. "That should be enough." Then he closed the door without another word. Ethan stood in the empty room, the silence pressing in. Later a van pulled up. The driver wore a plain uniform and drove him to a gray building with barred windows. Inside, children moved quietly, eyes down. The walls were chipped, the beds narrow with thin mattresses. Lights dimmed early, and the rules were strict. Ethan sat on his bunk, arms folded, shoulders hunched. He didn't speak, didn't ask. When the staff passed, their tired faces showed no warmth. Smiles were few. He watched the other children carefully, keeping his distance, head low. One evening the kitchen tap leaked, water dripping steadily. Ethan grabbed a wrench, fingers working fast but steady. Mr. James appeared beside him, wiping his hands on a rag. He didn't smile but looked directly at Ethan. "You're not your parents' mistake. You're God's project." Ethan blinked, surprised. His heart beat faster. "You've got something in you, boy. See it. Pain makes diamonds out of coal. But you've got to choose. Will you be bitter, or will you be better?" Ethan lay back on his bunk, staring at the cracked ceiling. His fists clenched tight, then relaxed. The question spun in his mind. Days later, a sleek black car pulled up near the worn streets. A man stepped out. His shirt was clean, his shoes shiny, and a soft smell of cologne followed him. He held out a sandwich and a bottle of water to Ethan. Ethan took the food slowly, chewing carefully, not wanting the moment to end. "I run a recycling company," the man said. "You look strong. Work hard, get paid. No stealing, no begging." Ethan studied the man's face. His eyes didn't look down on him. They looked like they saw something more. The next morning, Ethan followed him to a yard surrounded by a wire fence. Boys pushed carts, sorted trash, loaded trucks. Ethan grabbed a broom and swept the dusty ground. His arms ached, his back stiffened. Sweat soaked his shirt. At day's end, he counted coins in his pocket. His lips curved slightly. Weeks passed. He dragged a small mattress home, the cloth rough but his own. He tuned a second-hand radio to a quiet song. He found a public toilet and washed away the dust before work, feeling a small pride in clean skin. One evening, as the sun slipped behind rooftops, Mr. Robert called him close. "I've been watching you. You don't just work hard, you think. Quiet but sharp. Want to go to school?" Ethan's breath caught. The word hit him hard. School. A place he had only dreamed of. A place for other boys with lunchboxes and parents waiting. "I can't afford it," he whispered, eyes down. Mr. Roberts smiled, patient. "I didn't ask if you could pay. I asked if you want to learn." Ethan felt something warm rise inside. A door unlocking. That night, he stared at the ceiling, wide awake, heart full of a new kind of hope. Monday came with a donated uniform. The fabric was stiff, unfamiliar. Ethan stepped into a classroom full of younger faces. He didn't know answers, held no notebooks, but he listened hard, read slowly, asked quietly. After class, a woman with calm eyes, Miss Mary, waited. She handed him extra books and lessons without a word, only a gentle look. Weeks later, Ethan held a paper. The word excellent was written on top. Miss Mary nodded at him, silent but proud. One afternoon, rain soaked the streets. Ethan pulled his jacket tight, walking home faster. Under an umbrella, a woman in fine clothes talked with a man. A boy laughed nearby, the same age as Ethan. Ethan froze. She hadn't seen him yet. His breath caught, chest heavy. No anger, no hate, just an empty ache. His steps quickened. Rain mixed with tears he thought were long gone. He didn't look back. The gates of the recycling yard creaked as Ethan walked through them. His feet slowed. His fingers brushed the cool metal. Something in his chest shifted, like a quiet question with no answer. But he didn't turn back. He just stepped inside. Months rolled by. Ethan no longer drifted through the streets with hungry eyes. His shoulders straightened. His face looked sharper, stronger. In class, he raised his hand before anyone else. On weekends, he sorted cans and papers, helping run the yard. He tucked away his earnings in a small box beneath his bed. Each coin, each note, felt like a brick building a future. But the wind doesn't always blow one way. One morning, while sorting newspapers, a crumpled page slipped from the pile. His eyes froze. A photo stared back, his father. The headline shouted, "Respected businessman in legal trouble over fraud scandal." Ethan didn't breathe. He dropped the bundle. That face, it had been years. The man who gave him life but never food, never shelter, never love. He scanned the article with shaking hands. The words bled together. Stolen money, court hearings, seized homes. And at the end, asterisk, sources confirm the businessman is critically ill. Asterisk. Ethan sat down slowly on a wooden crate. His chest felt heavy. He thought he would feel cold. Or nothing. But instead, an ache rose from deep inside. He wiped his face with his sleeve and didn't speak to anyone that day. 2 days later, his feet led him to a hospital. The guard didn't stop him. No one asked questions. He walked straight to the ward listed in the article. Dim room. White sheets. Machines beeping low. His father lay there, pale like ash, lips cracked, eyes closed. Ethan stepped forward. The old man stirred. Their eyes met. "You came," the man whispered, voice dry like paper. Ethan said nothing. He just stood. The old man blinked slowly. His eyes filled. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he whispered. "I thought pushing you away would keep my family safe. But I destroyed everything." Ethan didn't move. His hands stayed in his pockets. "I see your face now / everywhere. You've grown. You look like me." The words cracked something inside Ethan. Not from hurt but release. A wound unwrapped. He turned to leave after a while. But he came back. Again. And again. Not for a father. But because he was no longer that small, forgotten boy. He was more. Weeks later, the old man closed his eyes for the last time, with Ethan beside him, holding his hand. The funeral was quiet. A short prayer. Small crowd. Ethan watched in silence. No tears. He had wept long ago. Later, at the lawyer's office, Ethan sat alone. A letter slid across the desk. "To the son I never raised, but who raised himself with more strength than I ever had." The words began. Inside was a key. And a bank slip. Enough to start again. Ethan opened the apartment door days later. It was small but clean. He stood in the center of the room, looking around. Then he smiled. He enrolled in college. His feet walked into class with shoes he bought himself. He started a small group to feed street children. He told his story not with tears but with hope. People listened. Volunteers joined. Donations came in. He called the center Grandma Margaret's place. The walls were painted bright yellow. Beds lined the rooms. The kitchen always smelled like stew and warm bread. One rainy afternoon, Ethan's phone rang. The voice on the other end trembled. "I don't know where else to go," she said. His mother. He stood quietly for a moment. The sound of the rain filled the silence. "Come," he said. She arrived in worn clothes. She didn't meet his eyes. He gave her tea. No questions. Just warmth. On the third day, she fell to her knees in the kitchen and sobbed. She spoke between tears, voice raw. She didn't speak as a mother, but as someone broken. Ethan crouched beside her. He held her hand. "It's okay," he said softly. "We both lost time. Let's not lose what's left." From that day she stayed. She washed clothes. She stirred pots of porridge. She sang to the little ones at nap time. She found her dignity in small acts of love. Ethan wore his graduation gown with quiet pride. Applause followed him off the stage. He grew the foundation to other towns. He walked into schools, shelters, prisons, and told his story. Not with shame, but like a light. His scars didn't hide. They shone. He turned pain into purpose. Not by forgetting, but by rising. Now, when people said his name, they didn't whisper it with pity. They said it with pride. He stood tall, not because his past was easy, but because he didn't let it hold him down. Ethan proved something the world needed to hear. Where you come from doesn't decide where you're going. And sometimes, even the most unwanted seed grows into the strongest tree. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate every single one of you. I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I loved creating it. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment to let me know your thoughts, and share it with your friends so they can join the fun too. And of course, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. More exciting content is coming your way. Stay tuned, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.